And at 10, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. You all know I love this one. This version of the Punisher is known for his violent methods and his high-tech weapons, including his battle van. He works with Chip, who monitors him through his computer, and his iconic symbol is a large white skull on his chest. Punisher went to New York City thinking that Spider-Man was behind a string of attacks at Empire State University, but it was actually Michael Morbius. Later, he would be convinced of this when Spider-Man mutated into the Man-Spider in front of him. He was later captured and taken to a parking garage at the World Trade Center, and with the help of Kraven the Hunter and Mariah Crawford, Spider-Man was cured, or I guess Man-Spider was cured. He later returned and thought that Peter Parker was the Green Goblin, and that he had kidnapped Mary Jane Watson, because she went missing. He then captured Harry Osborn, who was actually the Green Goblin at the time, but then wanted to know what Peter knew about Mary Jane's disappearance. But then, just like that, Mary Jane's clone appeared and the Punisher let him go. However, it's funny because since it's an animated cartoon in the 90s, he's not allowed to kill people, so he just uses lethal force. And at 9, Punisher 2099. The Punisher 2099 is a comic book series following the accounts of Jake Gallows in the year 2099 in an alternate Marvel universe. Jake Gallows, a member of the Public Eye Police Force, which is a private police protection service charging money to citizens, which is funny because they're called the Public Eye, and the Church of Thor, lost his mother, brother, and sister-in-law, and he himself was seriously injured when they were slain on the orders of TRON Stone, psychotic son of powerful businessman Tyler Stone. Jake comes across the original Punisher's war journal, stolen from the archives of the Public Eye. The last page bore the challenge, quote, "You who finds this, I charge you to carry on my work." Soon after, he became the new Punisher. Jake would later get revenge on TRON Stone, or so he believed, because TRON, after threatening the lives of several children, confronts Jake with a device that stops all high-speed projectiles, such as bullets. Jake pulls out a knife and starts slowly stabbing TRON multiple times, who seemingly dies. However, TRON would actually fall into a sewer where he would meet an upgraded Venom symbiote and take on the mantle of Venom 2099 in the pages of Spider-Man 2099. And at 8, Captain Punisher. On Earth 81223 in the pages of the Punisher War Journal, Frank Castle was serving in the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam War for a couple years until he went on leave to go home to be with his family in New York. One day he took his wife Mariah, daughter Lisa, and son Frank Jr. to Central Park for a picnic, but coincidentally, the family happened upon the scene of a mob hit. Fearing witnesses, the mobsters murdered Frank Castle's family in cold blood and escaped. As he cradled their bodies, screaming in horror, he made a vow to himself that he would take vengeance upon those who killed his family by becoming the vigilante known as the Punisher. Even with his efforts though, the United States and its society fell into chaos and disorder. Later on, Castle was taken captive by Iron Man and his secret group known as the Illuminati to convince him that the only way to bring back hope to the people was to make Castle into a new Captain America. They injected him with a newly modified version of the super soldier serum created by Mr. Fantastic, and Castle's physiology changed, making him stronger, faster, and more powerful than Steve Rogers ever was. They gave him the uniform and shield, and Frank quickly took on that role with great pride, but later he would repaint the costume and stuff so that he would be Captain Punisher. And at 7, the Punisher game. The 2005 Punisher game begins with a cinematic of the Punisher killing several footmen of the Yakuza. After he leaves the building though, he is apprehended by law enforcement in front of an unknown building. I'm guessing it's the building where he was killing the footmen. He is then transferred to Rikers Island and interrogated by police detectives Molly von Richthofen and Martin Soap. The majority of the game occurs in flashbacks during this interrogation. At first, the Punisher is raiding a house that was pushing illicit substances and eventually kills its owner, damaged by dropping him from several stories above the ground. After almost getting hit by a car upon his exit, the Punisher traces the vehicle to a chop shop. After slaughtering all the criminals there, he learns that it's owned by the Nuki crime family, led by Ma Nuki, because Carlo Duca, the shop's owner, is a Nuki lieutenant. The Punisher drops him in a car compactor where Duca is subsequently crushed. Oh yeah, this game is brutal. In a subsequent mission, the Punisher kills one of Ma Nuki's sons, Bobby, at Lucky's bar, and being a character in a video game with no consequences for your actions, I'm guessing that someone who needs to find a way to cut loose is on the other side of that controller, making video game Punisher probably one of the scariest versions of the Punisher there is. And at 6, Circle of Blood. The Circle of Blood storyline Punisher shares the same history as the main one, given that they take place in the same universe. However, newly imprisoned in Rikers following the events of the spectacular Spider-Man number 78 to 83, the Punisher is sprung from jail by the Trust, a citizens organization whose purpose is to make America great by brainwashing criminals and making them a part of their punishment squad. This group wears uniforms similar to the Punisher's and kills criminals. A man named Alaric is charged with this operation. So this version of the Punisher is brainwashed by a group of criminals who they think are doing the right thing by making America great and using the Punisher, among other villains, to do their dirty work. Yeah, that's a no thanks for me. Especially given that since he's brainwashed, the whole potential for a moral compass kicking in thing isn't gonna happen. And he's able to kill anyone basically, since this group definitely has their own agenda and might not necessarily care if innocent people get hurt, or if their targets are actually criminals or not. Halfway through in at number 5, Cosmic Ghost Rider. Frank Castle of Earth TRN 666 is certainly similar to that of 616 Frank, but this Earth has one key difference. During the Heroes of Earth's last stand against Thanos, the Punisher was hit in the head by the debris of a building that Hulk had been thrown into and died, his soul being subsequently sent to hell because, you know, he's the Punisher, but he was willing to give anything in order to punish Thanos for slaughtering his planet. The Punisher signed a demonic deal with Mephisto and became the latest Ghost Rider. When he returned to Earth, however, Thanos was already gone and everything on the planet was dead. And Ghost Rider spent the next countless years alone, roaming endlessly and being unable to die, with no one to love or even kill. After even Mephisto fell silent to his calls, he began to lose his mind. So when a badly injured Galactus arrived on Earth seeking help against Thanos, unaware that the population of Earth had already been decimated by him, the Ghost Rider offered him the dead planet in exchange for the chance to punish the Mad Titan as his herald, an offer that the Great Devourer gladly accepted, imbuing Frank with the power cosmic and becoming one of the scariest heralds of Galactus. So yeah, this dude is the Punisher, Ghost Rider, and a Herald of Galactus. Should have been higher than 5, my bad. And at 4, War Machine. Frank Castle has always been a one-man army. As the Punisher, he acted as a vigilante for years and waged war against all manner of criminals across the Marvel Universe. Compared to other superheroes in the Marvel Universe though, Frank Castle stands apart with his own specific code that nobody else really agrees with. He doesn't have any superpowers or special gadgets, but he is still armed to the teeth with guns, bombs, knives, and a lack of morality, and whatever else he seemingly has in his endless arsenal that is there for plot purposes. And with all of that, he's been more than efficient in his grim mission. However, Castle really took things to the next level when he started wearing James Rhodey Rhodes' War Machine armor. After painting his signature skull logo on the Iron Man suit, the Punisher became a true engine of war, a literal war machine. And while inside the armor, Castle lived up to the War Machine codename more than Rhodey ever did. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Daredevil. In the Netflix's Daredevil series, Francis David Frank Castle Sr. is a former Force Recon Marine turned vigilante. While serving in Afghanistan alongside of Billy Russo, where the duo became friends, Castle and Russo joined the Black Ops team. Cerberus Squad under the command of the CIA officer William Rollins aimed at capturing, interrogating, and executing high-value targets, which we all know Frank loves. Fearing that he was slowly losing his honor though, Castle returned to his family, only to lose them all during a brutal shooting. So Castle became the Punisher, and he aimed to clean up New York City of all crime by any means necessary. While seeking to avenge his own family's deaths, Castle also came into conflict with Daredevil, because, you know, it's the Daredevil series, that's kind of how it goes. Castle was soon arrested, and despite the efforts of Nelson and Murdoch, he was sentenced to life in prison. However, Castle was then freed with the help of Wilson Fisk, and discovered that the blacksmith was in fact the one who had been responsible for his family's murder, or at least one of them. But given the dark and gritty nature of the MCU, and specifically Netflix shows, oh man, this is certainly a powerful version, especially based on popularity, because pretty sure he's one of the most popular characters in the show. Penultimately, in at number 2, Marvel Knights. Marvel Knights the Punisher is the 6th Marvel comic series featuring the Frank Castle Punisher. It consists of 37 issues as a part of the Marvel Knights imprint, and most of the issues in the series are written by Garth Ennis. The series continues on from Ennis's The Punisher 2000 limited series, and the Russian, who was decapitated in the previous series, is resurrected using stolen SHIELD technology and returns as one of 3 main antagonists of the series. However, there also seems to be a Marvel Knights Punisher 2099, which is another take on the year 2099, featuring Cassandra Castle, who goes by the alias of Cassandra Nachos? I don't know. She's the daughter of Frank Castle and Elektra and has a son named Franklin, but when she's diagnosed with cancer, Cassandra sets out to teach her son everything he needs to know to become the next Punisher. Upon her death, Franklin chooses not to take over the mantle though, allowing the title to end with his mother. So you know what? You can think about whichever version you choose for this number, alright? You're welcome. It's like a choose your own adventure top 10 list, but just for that number. And finally, in at number 1, Punisher Max. The Max imprint of the Marvel Universe allows the creators the freedom to write more realistic and hard-edged stories that can't really work in the main Marvel Universe because, you know, it's comics. But you know, this guy, because of this, is going to be pretty badass and pretty damn powerful, just thanks to a lack of restrictions. Also, unlike the previous Max series, which mainly focused on Frank Castle's The Punisher's war against the mob, this series has him squaring off against Max versions of popular Marvel villains such as the Kingpin, Bullseye, and Elektra. The series came to a conclusion with issue 22. Interrogating a mobster, the Punisher discovers a meeting place where many mobsters will actually be in one place, and you know, haha, that's his breakfast. After the meeting with the mob bosses, the men determine that the mythic Kingpin of crime should be fabricated by them in order to throw the Punisher off their trails. So one of the boss's bodyguards, Wilson Fisk, is apparently chosen as this new figurehead. When the Punisher crashes the meeting, Fisk gets the bosses to safety and has a chance to kill the Punisher, but doesn't take it. When he gets home to his wife and sleeping child, he receives a call that will actually seat him as the real Kingpin. Smiling, hinting at an ulterior motive, he accepts, and this is the driving force behind the rest of the series. Spoiler alert for the ending if anyone wants to read it. 3, 2, 1. The series concludes with issue 22, which covers the death, funeral, and burial of Frank Castle. And at the end of issue 22, the Punisher's death sparks a public uprising with citizens purging New York's criminals. So yeah, the Punisher goes from one person to a whole bunch.
Coming in number 10, we've got the Pizza Party Dogpile. What a place to start, am I right? It sure doesn't sound like a brutal kill. In fact, the way I've titled this one, it seems like something that might happen at your little cousin's hockey tournament. All fun and games until someone loses an eye, right? Or in this case, suffocates underneath an enormous man. See, Frank Castle and one of his many enemies, known as the Russian, have fought on multiple occasions. In this particular instance though, the Russian gained the upper hand. Pummeling the Punisher, things weren't looking too good for our revenge-fueled friend. However, as it often tends to happen, the fight got taken a little too far and the tables did turn. After tossing the Punisher into his neighbor, Mr. Bumpo's apartment, some improvised weapons were used. Hot, spicy pizzas to be precise. Castle tosses some of these molten meals into his adversary's face and then uses Mr. Bumpo himself as a smothering weapon. The rotund man makes for a great weight and the Russian gets stuck underneath. Adding a little assistance to the top of the pile, he stays there for a solid half hour. At that point, the Russian's breath is all but guaranteed to be stopped. Suffocation is a brutal way to die no matter how you slice it, but being assailed by someone else's dinner and then squashed under a huge friendly man? That's tough. And poor Mr. Bumpo, right? Unwillingly added to the fray as a weapon against a murderous madman by a murderous madman. And to make matters worse, Castle ensures the Russian's death by decapitating him. I'm sure that's an experience Bumpo does not look back upon fondly. Coming in number 9, we've got a bad day for Wolverine. If we're being honest here, I'm not so sure what a great day for Wolverine looks like. He's haunted by his past, traumatized by the experiments performed upon him, and all around pretty grumpy and surly. So a good day might just be an extra hot dog at dinner time, or maybe a smile from a person he isn't totally annoyed by. But a bad day, oh boy, this one really takes the cake. The Punisher and Wolverine are technically on the same side most of the time, right? They're fighting for the good guys. Kinda. So one wouldn't necessarily expect them to go at each other, but it did end up happening. And in this fight, Frank Castle does not hold back. Where do I even start? Wolverine's face is ripped off, exposing the bare skull underneath. Ouch. Then there's the bit where Castle takes a shotgun and blasts Wolverine's, well, bits. That can't be too pleasant either. And to seal the deal, while Wolverine is crawling along the floor, Castle revs up a steamroller and runs it right over his mangled body. That's pretty far from heroic behavior, don't you think? Coming in number 8, we've got Redhead Ransom. I guess these days the goofy kids from Riverdale have a bit of an edgier reputation thanks to whatever the hell the good folks over at the CW are doing. Things get dark out there. Hell, there have even been little horror adaptations of the Archie comics, from mythical monsters to the literal predator. But did anyone expect Archie Andrews to be held at gunpoint by the Punisher? The all-American lad with a heart of gold? What did he do to deserve this? Well, as it turns out, he matched the profile of a notorious narcotics smuggler and salesperson known as Red. So the Punisher wasn't off his rocker in pointing a weapon at Archie. But still, all dressed up in his Letterman jacket, and then he's looking down the barrel of a deadly weapon. At least Castle didn't pull the trigger. Coming in number 7, apply directly to the forehead. Head on. You know the old commercial, right? Well, the Punisher decided to take that advice and run with it, although I kinda doubt this is available at Walgreens. See, the human skull is a remarkably strong thing. It takes a lot of force to cause damage to one, especially if you're running low on weapons and ammo. Thankfully, if you're extra resourceful, you might be able to find a solution to being low on head-cracking implements. Just use another person's head. Oh wow. The Punisher just straight up double grips this one guy's head and drives it full force into another dude's dome. It's not often someone can tell you that the last thing that went through their mind was someone else's. Coming in number 6, an Empire's State of Mind. Remember that scene where Batman tosses a guy from like the second story and his victim's like, oh, you're not gonna kill me from here, and Batman's like, yeah, that's kind of the point, I want to break your legs, not your neck. Good times. The Punisher is taking no chances. Legs may be broken, but they're not gonna get up. No sir. Somehow, someway, he brought one of his many marks to the tippy top of the Empire State Building. From my experience, the security around there wouldn't let a spandex-clad man with a skull on his chest carry a bound and gagged person to the observation deck, but hey, Frank Castle does what Frank Castle wants. So after hauling this poor guy all the way up, what does he do? Do they share a moment of mutual appreciation for the New York City skyline? Do they feed quarters into one of the many pairs of tourist binoculars up there? Nah, Frank tosses the guy off the side. And in the comic, it all seems well and good, like flipping a coin off the edge, who's gonna know? The Mythbusters aren't here to confirm whether or not something falling from that height would kill someone, but we can all assume that the man falling from height perished. However, what happened to his body? Did it smash someone's car, land in a dumpster, splatter all across a busy street? It's questions like that that keep me up at night. Coming in number 5, teaming up with Eminem. Did you know that there was a run of comics where the Punisher kills Eminem's team, listens as Eminem raps entire songs to him, and then gets Eminem to kill Barracuda? I'm not sure if this counts as super dark, but that is a very weird crossover. You know what? It is dark. I'm making it so. All those poor groupies gone in the blink of an eye. Then the Punisher has to deal with whatever nonsense Eminem gets him involved with from then on. That's it for this entry. I wanted to bring up the fact that the Punisher and Eminem had a comic series together. Thanks for listening. Coming in number 4, shark bait hoo-ha-ha. We've already touched upon the Punisher's almost religious use of improvised weapons. Pizza, skulls, car batteries, you name it. If it can hypothetically hurt someone, he's probably used it to inflict some serious damage, Phil Swift style. However, a lot of these weapons have probably been used by your average thug to similar effect. Maybe a little less brutal, but still deadly and painful if used correctly. But how many people can say that they've literally used a shark to kill someone? I'm sure there are a few, but the list can't be all that long. So of course, Frank Castle finds a way to utilize a deadly aquatic predator to take down a target. Legend. Noticing that one of the people he was fighting was missing a limb or two near the water, the Punisher got a gruesome idea. After attracting an enormous shark with some blood in the water, he pushes the poor guy in, and we get to see the moment it all comes together. In a flurry of teeth and fins, the criminal is mangled by a shark, and the Punisher simply looks on, satisfied. Coming in number 3, brutalizing Barracuda. Never a fan of underdoing a job, we've seen the Punisher really go to town on all sorts of rivals over the years. It's almost a challenge for authors behind the comics to come up with new and inventive ways to end lives through Castle's eyes. But when he finally gets his hands on longtime enemy Barracuda, the Punisher did not shy away. No sir, he turned that mess up to 10. After biting chunks of his face skin out, Castle goes in for the kill. Not immediately though, he really takes a moment to to soak it all in. There are some gunshots and a nice little curb stomp, and then eventually a car battery is brought out. Uh-oh. Allegedly clamped down upon some unmentionables, the Punisher lets loose some insane electrical shocks that really get Barracuda going, and that's not enough even then. After some 15 minutes of agonizing electricity, he finally takes a pickaxe out and chops Barracuda's limbs and head off. That's just horrifying. At number 2, we've got Polar Bear Bloodbath. Now, most of what happens here isn't explicitly shown to the reader. We see Ma Nucci, famed mafia matriarch, appear to get back at the Punisher for killing her sons. However, doing so at the zoo was probably a bad call. The Punisher manages to maneuver the fight into a polar bear enclosure, and these beasts are not happy to have visitors. Dang, and all those Coca-Cola commercials convinced me that polar bears are super chill. What do you mean a major corporation lied to me? Back to the matter at hand though, Ma and a couple of her lackeys are left to fight for their lives against enormous ice-faring predators, and they don't come out the other end looking too pretty. Ma in particular is in pretty bad shape, missing her arms and legs. What she isn't missing, however, is her attitude. And finally at number 1, Into the Fire. And this is a fun one to end on. After putting Ma Nucci through that animalistic encounter, the Punisher had to make sure he finished the job. Just going in and killing her wouldn't be enough though. In fact, to him, that would almost be a mercy. No, he's gotta raise the stakes, as always. So after the entire ordeal is as good as done, he decides to set fire to Ma's mansion with her still in it. She's a feisty one though, and makes it out of the fire one last time. Crawling towards Castle in one final desperate attempt to kill him, she performs what I can only describe as that move that Pokemon do when they run out of PP to use. Struggle. The Punisher sees this, lines up a nasty kick, and sends Ma flying back into the Inferno for good. Sheesh. What a lunatic, am I right? Who else could get away with all this horrific stuff and still be so beloved? Only Frank Castle.
Number 10. Hawkeye, Clint Barton edition. There is more than one Hawkeye. Let's start off with a cute, let's call it cute moment between these two during the War Machine Punisher arc. We'll get into how he got that armor a little later. In Punisher Volume 1, number 224, we have Clint taking a shot at Castle mid-flight, which he of course makes. But well, Frank's not exactly happy about it, and he takes Clint's pizza as retaliation. Yes, you heard that right. I think that last part just really drives home how petty that whole incident was. Pure minor annoyance to start us off before we get serious, cause oh, it's gonna get serious. Number 9. Deadpool. The Merc with a Mouth could make his way onto many of these annoyance lists, and I'm sure he already has. As funny as he can be for audiences, working with him can be a bit of a chore for the heroes of the Marvel Universe, but particularly for Frank Castle. While both these characters can be considered anti-heroes, they operate on a very different set of morals, and the tones of their books are quite different, though more so as it has evolved. Early Deadpool does not bear too much resemblance to modern Deadpool. The foundations are there, but he has evolved over the years. These two have clashed on numerous occasions, usually in more comedic battles. Well, on Deadpool's end anyways. However, they really began to rub each other the wrong way when they ended up on the same team, this being in the 2013 series run of Thunderbolts. The two were added to a team assembled by General Ross, aka the Red Hulk, or Rulk. They were assigned to take on, well, assignments similar to those of X-Force, which was a change for this team. Here, Deadpool nursed some serious feelings for Elektra, and he became jealous of the connection she shared with Frank, which led to much whining and attempts at escalation on his part. Basically, the Punisher just wants Deadpool to leave him alone, but circumstances and mercenary contracts keep bringing the two back together. Number 8. Batman. You heard that right. Now before you get irate and proceed to be scandalized that the host apparently can't tell the difference between Marvel and DC, let me tell you about the 90s, a time when Marvel and DC actually crossed over a few times, even creating an amalgam universe that was comprised of their characters combined, fused together into one. It was preceded by a bunch of team-ups. I have a soft spot for the Jubilee and Robin team-up, that being the third Robin Tim Drake. You know it got romantic. Side note, there were a couple of team-ups in the early 2000s as well. JLA/Avengers anyone? Anyway, for this annoyance we're going back to 1994, and a comic called Punisher/Batman Deadly Nights. We're looking at this one and not the other team up because this one has Frank going up against Bruce Wayne, not Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael, who was Batman for a hot minute post Bane breaking Bruce's back. In this comic, the two team up to stop an alliance between Jigsaw and the Joker. However, Frank just couldn't get behind the Dark Knight's methods, and actually wound up finding himself disgusted by what he viewed as a codependent relationship between the Joker and Batman. Depending upon who you talk to, he's not wrong. Number 7. Archie Andrews. Oh, reaching again, are we? No, Archie is a superhero actually. Sometimes. Let me explain. In the 90s, yes, the glorious 90s, there was an Archie comic called Archie and the Super Teens, and Archie was Pure Heart the Powerful, a hero who taps into his pH factor, his pure heart, which gives him super strength and resilience, but he can only use these powers so long as his heart is pure. So no dark feelings for him. These comics debuted in 1994, which was also the year that the Archie meets the Punisher comic debuted. So all I'm saying is that this could be the same universe. Headcanon powers activate. In this comic, Frank mistakes Archie for his target, but then the two need to team up to save a kidnapped Veronica Lodge. As you can imagine, teaming up with an awkward teen who isn't exactly the most helpful, pure heart or no, this was a bit of a harder assignment than most. Also, he flirts with Miss Grundy. Actual Miss Grundy, not criminally negligent, predatory hot Miss Grundy from Riverdale. Number 6. Captain America. This shouldn't really surprise anyone. When written correctly, these two are operating on pretty much the opposite sides of the moral spectrum. Cap does not approve of the Punisher's methods, and when given the opportunity is not shy about expressing it. Multiple times, such as during the original Civil War comics run back in 2006. This was particularly hurtful to Frank because he actually admired Captain America, and in a way still does. Although he actually liked Hydra Cap, so I think that tells you all you need to know about that. The two have also had their alternate universe run-ins. Frank has killed Cap twice. One is a zombie Cap begging to be killed because of his actions though. The other time though is from the Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe one-shot released in 1995, wherein Frank is pushed to the edge by the killing of his family during a battle between Avengers, X-Men, and the Brood. He takes his anger out on the heroes he views as responsible for making it happen. One of those, of course, being Captain America. In this arc, Punisher feels that the heroes are derelict. It actually all leads to a rather heart-wrenching conclusion. It may sound like a gimmick, but this comic is worth a read. Also, these two have a team-up comic called Blood and Glory. Just thought you'd like to know, because that's a great title. Number 5. Venom. Now this may surprise some, because really as far as anti-heroes go, at times Venom can be pretty brutal. And in Venom's early days as a solo frontrunner, the two did team up, such as in Funeral Pyre back in 1993. I'm telling you, people make fun of 90s comics a lot, but some cool stuff happened. However, there's a bit more tension between them these days, particularly since Frank killed Anti-Venom at one point. Yep, Frank can be too intense even for Eddie Brock, who was struggling to keep Frank in check. The Punisher doesn't like people questioning his methods, especially when they turn out to be wrong. But don't worry, he got better. It's the comic verse, death is an inconvenience. You're just one wall punch away from being revived. Well, in the DC universe anyway. It may get even more convoluted in the Marvel universe, but hey, Tony Stark can just build you a new body. It'll be fine. Number 4. Iron Man. This was a more recent development post-Civil War II, the comic book event from 2016, which fans have a lot of feelings about. A lot of which can be summed up with a simple, but why though? Punisher found himself in possession of Rhodey's War Machine armor post his death, and was using it in ways that Tony didn't exactly approve of, and he wanted it back. Frank Castle was not on his side in this conflict, and wasn't thrilled with being told what to do by Tony Stark. In fact, it wasn't even him who got the armor back, but actually a newly resurrected James Rhodes, in a new body. Like I said, Tony Stark will build you a new body. He also had to get himself a new body post Civil War II as well. Number 3. Black Widow. Now this is yet another near philosophical conflict between these two, but they can also work well together. So let's take a look at an example with 2014's Madhouse film Avengers Confidential, Black Widow, and Punisher. The thing with the Punisher is he wants things done on his timeline, and organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D., sometimes they're running a longer game, letting people get away for bigger fish, etc. Frank's not about that life. However, Black Widow is actually quite good at following orders, and despite everything, she can be quite loyal, which means sometimes her unwillingness to deviate from her mission can put her directly in Frank's way. Which, let's face it, is annoying, particularly when she is ready to fight to back it up. But they can also work well together if their goals align. Number 2. Spider-Man. Now the Punisher and Spider-Man have a pretty even-keel relationship in modern comics. As much as anyone can have with Frank, that is. But they did not have a good first meeting. The Punisher actually debuted in a Spider-Man comic, specifically The Amazing Spider-Man number 129 in 1974. Hired by the Jackal, the Punisher was out to kill Spidey, but actually turned into a very popular character, as despite everything, he was revealed to have a moral code, and people were curious about him and wanted to know more. Ultimately, Frank was initially used as a contrast to more liberal Marvel characters, of whom Spidey was one. But post their first meeting, the two would team up frequently, where their contrasting viewpoints and styles would come into conflict. Side note, he's killed Spidey a bunch of times in events and alternate timelines. Poor Peter. However, he hasn't come into conflict with him anywhere near as much as our number 1. There's a fine line between grudging respect and outright annoyance, and number 1 is straddling that perfectly. I'm pretty sure you can guess who it is. It's the Daredevil. In some ways, Matt Murdock is Frank Castle's perfect foil. Their mere existence and methods challenge the other, and they have completely given their lives over to their ideals. And yet, they can both kind of see where the other is coming from. Lots of the Punisher's annoyance stems from the fact that he feels that the Daredevil would be more effective if he was more ruthless, and the fact that he believes that he has faith in an inherently flawed system. But more than that, Matt makes him question himself by showing another path that is not wholly unsuccessful, one of mercy. Depending on the conflict, the Daredevil can end up making Frank look like a monster. This was very poignantly displayed in the aforementioned Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, when, spoilers for a comic from 1995, Punisher kills the Daredevil, unmasking him to reveal his friend and ally Matt Murdock. It's the final straw for him, and ultimately, he kills himself. That's right, ending it off full dark, only darkness.